Hi, I'm Carrie Cunningham. I'm the owner of Endless Designs by Carrie, where I create custom garments and teach sewing classes. Have you ever had a problem finding the perfect pattern? I have. I do all the time. So what we'll talk about today is pattern matching, sometimes known as Franken pattern. We're going to start with this dress. So this dress is three different patterns. The top is one pattern. The bottom is a second pattern. And then the flounce on the sleeve is a totally different pattern. So I'm using 3 different patterns to make this dress. So we will start with, what I'm making here is a half dress, because I've already made it. We'll start with the bodice, attaching the bodice to the skirt. What you need to do and make sure that you do is, here's the top of the bodice here, and that's the armhole there. And here's the skirt. Sometimes because you're mixing pattern companies, they don't all sync together. So you would have to make sure that these pieces fit. The same thing with sleeves. We're not inserting the sleeve today, but with sleeves you have to, at a minimum, mark the back of your sleeve pattern so you know what's the back and what's the front. And then you'll make any adjustments that you need to make sure that it all fits together. So we're going to go to the sewing machine and start with the top and the bodice. And today I'm using a contrasting thread, but the first thing I want to do is test my stitch because I'm using a knit fabric that stretches a little bit in both directions. So I want to test my stitch. What I'm going to use is what's called a wobble stitch or a lightning bolt stitch. It has the same name. And I just want to test it, so I'm going to start with setting it up for that. And on this machine, it's number 8. On your machine, it might be a different number. Then once I test this, I'll tell you which setting is best. So this one is a 3.5 by 1.4. It's a little bit wide. So I'm going to take it down to a 2.5 by 1.4. Again, it's a wobble stitch. So the other thing you can do is you can also use your zigzag stitch and set that to the 2.5 by 1.4. You can also do a serger. The dress that I made here is completely done on the serger, or 90% done on the serger. And the other option is a stretch thread. You can use that as well. But I like this stitch, and I'll show you what I like about it. If you look at it, where I started with the wider stitch, you can see it a little bit as a zigzag, but when I narrowed it down to the 2.5 by 1.4, it looks like a straight stitch from the inside, or from the inside of your garment. So we'll go with that stitch, and we're going to stitch the top to the bottom. Make sure we get everything nice and lined up. Make sure it all fits. And you want to make sure it fits before you come to the machine. So I'm using a 5/8 inch stitch. And you can also do that again on your serger. And I'm going to stitch all the way through. And if you don't know what the 5/8 inch stitch is, on your machine you have guides here. On most machines you have a guide here. So I'm right at that 5/8 inch line. It's just a little shy of the edge of the presser foot. We'll go to the end. On knits, I don't like to do back stitches because sometimes when you're at the edge, it'll go down into the machine, and we don't want to do that. So I'm just going to cut my thread and take it off the machine and take it back to the table so you can see the stitch up close. So here is the top, and here is the bottom. And there's that stitch. Nice and narrow. On this side, it looks really good. I'm using black as a contrast, just so you can see. I would normally use red. But yeah, so that's ready. And then we will work on the flounce. And I know some people are a little bit afraid of circles, sewing in the round, but it's not that difficult. So the key here is to find the center of the sleeve. And I like to put a pin in it to mark it, rather than using a marking tool. This is my marking tool. I'll put a pin there. That's the center of the sleeve. And then I want to do the same thing with the flounce. So find the center, and we'll put a pin here. And now that they're marked, we can take it to the machine. We'll put right sides together. And pin those 2 center points. So line those 2 pins up. I take one out, hold it in place, take the other one out, and pin it back in place. And it's ready to go through the machine. So you just want to keep your raw edges together. No pulling, no stretching, no need to do that. You don't want to do that on any knits. And then we're just going to start with our same stitch, our same wobble stitch. Let's see if I can get some speed in here. So you don't need to turn this. You just sew as if you're sewing a straight stitch. And just keep it straight. Don't let it pucker. Don't let it cause any puckers. Keep everything lined up. If you need to put more pins, you can. But not a lot. Maybe 3 on each side. 3 on each side of the center point. I definitely wouldn't use more than that. So I'm taking this pin out because we don't sew over pins. And we're going to get this all lined up. And we're almost at the end of this. And then I'll show you a couple other things. Okay, so we got our flounce on. Look how pretty she is. Let's show you here on the table. She's really pretty, no puckers. And it's ready to be sewn up. So let's go back to the machine and we will sew the sleeve together. And again, I'm going to use one pin here right at the ruffle because I want these seams lined up as perfectly as possible. And then I'll just sew the sleeve together. So this is a knit fabric and it's curling, but that's okay, we can get it. So again, I'm going to line up all my raw edges. All the way to the end. I'm sewing close to the pin because I'm capturing the seam allowance before I take the pin out. And that way I'll know it's straight from that point. So this is kind of a lesson on sewing with knits. Use your wobble stitch, use your stretch needle, go slow, keep everything lined up, use as few pins as possible. Okay, so there's our sleeve stitched together. Here's the underarm, and here's your flounce. And now I'm going to turn it to the other side and show you how you can hem this. And I do like to stitch the sleeve together to hem it. Cut my threads. So here, I take it and I can turn it just a little bit. So about a 3/8 inch, anywhere from 1/4 to 3. And you use the same process on the bottom of the skirt, but you want a little more depth on the skirt. So I would go 1/2 inch to 1.25 inches on the skirt bottom, because you want that body for it. And you notice that because it's a knit, it's rolling, I just run my fingernail under there. And I'll just get this started. Let's use that button to get over that bulk. And because this flounce is not going to be worn against the body, you can also stitch at this point with straight stitch if you like. And just stitch close to the edge. If you need to mark it, go ahead and do that. If you need to press it, go ahead and do that. But on knits, I generally don't have to do that. I can just do what I just did there, run my fingernail under. You don't need to stretch it. You don't need to pull it. Let the machine do the work. Let the feed dogs do the work. Let your needle do your work, and let your thread do the work. And your presser foot as well. Let them all do their jobs. Okay, so I'm going to take this back to the table. So we'd have our dress top, our bottom, and we have our sleeve. And now if you look at this, you can kind of tell where I started. So here I started with the flounce. That's this, obviously that part. I'll turn it around so you can see the hem there too. And then I have the bodice from this pattern. And I have the skirt from this pattern. And this skirt can be as long as you want. You can even make it wider if you needed to. So that's how easy it is to mix your patterns. You can mix 2 or 1 or 3 or even 4 or more to get the exact garment that you need. And you also got a little bit about how to sew knits.